Hi.
Hello, good afternoon, good evening.
Hi, Christian. Let me assign you the room.
Thank you.
Hi, Christian. I've made you co-host, and you're now in the French room. I've seen it. Hi, Christian. Can you hear me? Yeah. Let's switch over. Bonjour. Yeah. What am I supposed to come? I've not said it in a long time. Comment ça va, yeah. Okay. Sure thing. All right. Let's let the rest of the co-hosts in.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes. Good afternoon. Good evening. I don't think it's evening anywhere, but good afternoon. So the reason why we'd said we join a bit early was to, make sure all our things are working, our headphones are working and everything. And in case you have any questions, we would then answer them before we start. So that's the reason why we are joining early. So in case you have any questions, you can unmute and ask up until the time when we'll be accepting everyone else to join.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Billy, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I think I was talking, but my microphone was not working. I said, Kemi, thank you because it's a good idea. It's true that we get some response of about our issues from the facilitators. Um,
Yes.
so if there's anything else, I will let you know. But it's okay.
Okay. And then when it gets to the top of the hour, you and Titus are starting. Unfortunately for you, there will be no one to introduce you. So you'll introduce yourselves and we'll start.
Okay, don't worry for that. So I think it would be the first intervention, right?
Yes, we'll start
Okay.
with
Okay.
inviting Professor Adebayo
Okay, great.
to give
Can we please
speech.
test the translation, or have you already done it?
Okay. The channels are already open and the translator is online. So Christian, maybe you could start and then we can test. Let's.
Okay, I will switch my channel to test. So maybe Kenneth, you can speak, and I will try to get it from here.
Okay. Welcome everyone. Good afternoon and good evening from wherever you are in the world. We welcome you to the African Society for Social and Behavior Change Symposium 2025. My name is Elizabeth Kemjisha. Is it working?
Okay, it's
Yes, it's
working.
working very well.
Yes,
Okay,
correctly.
perfect. Perfect. Thank you.
Um, okay. I would like to share with you some instruction that we could share with the participants before we start. You can let me know if it's relevant or no. Let me share it quickly, please. Um,
So excuse me, just before you share it, Billy, could we stop letting people in? Because we haven't yet started, and for now we just wanted only the facilitators in so that we can organize ourselves. But now I'm seeing we have some members who are not the facilitators, and they'll be wondering what are they listening to because we haven't
Oh,
started.
okay.
Yeah, so don't let anyone in. Leave them in the waiting room until the top of the hour.
Okay,
And for
okay.
that has joined who's not a facilitator, our apologies. Feel free to leave and come back, or you're welcome to stay.
But thank you for coming earlier. Really glad to
Yes.
see you.
Yes, Billy.
Okay, so I can go on. Let me just share my screen. Can you see my screen, please?
Yes, it's clear.
It's clear.
Okay. Okay, I'm just wondering if there's anything to keep or to move from here. So firstly, I should inform about the session is bilingual and people can get the translation online. Second, to ask them to keep the microphone muted during the session, and then to ask participants to introduce themselves in the chat, just to give the name, country, and position. Then we can share also, I don't know if it's a good idea, but we can share the agenda in the chat. I don't know if you have a
Yes.
PDF version.
We shall share the agenda in the chat. I think we can do name and country and maybe leave out the role.
Okay.
Yes.
Kemi, just a quick one. We need to remember to introduce the countries. For example, the keynote speakers from Egypt. So you just remember to mention that country chapter Egypt here. Or Adebayo from Nigeria. So you just remember to mention the countries.
Oh, yes. Yeah, so Billy, you can just add that in your notes, eh? Professor Adebayo is from Nigeria. The keynote speaker is from Egypt. Then the next one, Alan, is from Uganda. I think for the rest, we have the countries.
Okay, but I'm not talking about the speakers, but this is more for the participants. They can
Yes,
just introduce themselves in the chat. But for the
yes,
speakers, we are charged to, I think we will do it in introducing them.
yes. Okay.
But this is only for the participants and not focus on speakers. So if you think there's anything to change or I don't know.
Yes,
Is it good for all of you?
this is good. Maybe
Mhm.
maybe for the last one,
Okay.
your contact details if you want to stay connected after the session or connected with the participants. Because I think
Okay.
what people share their details and expect something connection maybe from us at the secretariat, but
Oh,
be with each other. So maybe
okay.
as opposed to
Okay.
contact could be share your LinkedIn profile, something like that.
Yeah, I think it's better.
Yeah.
Okay. I think yeah, thank you. So did I forget anything to say at the
No,
start?
no, you
Okay.
have. This is good
Okay.
enough. You just have to continue to tell people to share their questions in the chat. We are going to be picking them from the chat.
Okay, great. I think there's another question from my colleague of Burkina Faso. I don't know if he's online, Mr. Hippolyte.
Yes, I'm online, and I already discussed with Mitchell, so I have the
Okay,
the response to my question.
okay,
It's
thank you,
about
dear.
the translation and also the modality of sharing the questions. And she said that they will go gradually, question by question. So it's okay from my side.
Okay, thank you, dear.
Then if we have any questions during the symposium once we start, just put them in the other WhatsApp group where we all are so that we can quickly respond and take any decisions that need to be taken. Also, when we come to the time of letting people in, maybe Hippo, Gladys, and Christian, as well as yourself, Billy, don't worry about letting people in. We will let them in on our side because we also need to manage for trolls. So we shall do that, the letting people in from the secretariat. Don't worry about it. So that we don't get any.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah, that's a good point. So, at which time are you really starting? Because sometimes people take time to.
At 4 p.m., like in the next 9 minutes, we shall start letting people in.
Yeah, but I mean,
Or
when
start
are we? Yeah,
3 minutes after 4 to
3
4.
minutes. Okay.
3 minutes after 4. So once it gets to 4, we're going to start letting people in. And then after 3 minutes, immediately you start.
Okay. Okay, good.
Billy, let's sorry for the change. Let's do 5 minutes. 5 minutes after 4. So that's
Okay.
5 minutes. What time did you say it is on your side yesterday? You 3 hours before?
I think 5 is fine.
Yeah, 5
So
minutes
that,
after.
yeah, so that they have time to maybe switch the language or let things in the chat about themselves, and then we can start at 5.
Yes. Sounds good.
I'm just checking now for Mr. Titus. I'm not seeing him online. Um, Informer que vous pouvez utiliser le traducteur parce qu'on a un interprète. Et donc, n'hésitez pas à switcher justement vers l'anglais ou le français selon votre pays et votre langue. So just to let know everyone that there's a translation so that you can switch in French or English depending of your language. And please, we are going to start in 4 minutes. Thank you very much. Cette session très interactive et fun. Donc, c'est vraiment un espace d'apprentissage où nous aurons vraiment des intervenants de qualité et nous sommes très heureux de pouvoir avoir ces réflexions autour du travail que nous faisons sur le terrain et surtout sur les défis liés aujourd'hui au financement. Pour faciliter votre compréhension, n'hésitez pas justement à switcher la langue car cet appel est fait en 2 langues, en français et en anglais, et on a un interprète qui est disponible. Et donc, vous pourrez juste appuyer sur l'option d'interprétation en bas de votre écran pour choisir la langue qui vous convient. Et donc, nous allons démarrer tout à l'heure, mais juste avant, nous souhaitons vous partager quelques orientations concernant cette session. Nous vous informons déjà que on vous demande plutôt de couper les micros durant toute la session et nous pourrons justement vous donner la parole lorsque nous allons constater les interventions ou plutôt les mains levées. Et vous pourrez également laisser dans le chat votre nom, votre pays d'origine et le rôle ou votre position au sein de votre organisation. Et ensuite, vous trouverez l'agenda de cette session dans le chat pour vous donner une idée des interventions prévues et de l'agencement du temps. N'hésitez pas, vraiment, si vous avez des questions, à les écrire dans le chat. L'équipe se chargera de les recueillir et de pouvoir y répondre. Un petit bonus, c'est vraiment un espace de réseautage, donc n'hésitez pas à partager vos liens de vos profils LinkedIn si vous souhaitez rester connecté avec les autres participants après cette session. Donc, sans plus tarder, je m'avais déjà présenté notre cher professeur Adebayo Fayoyin, qui va nous faire le mot de bienvenue. Et donc, professeur Adebayo est le président du conseil d'administration de la Société africaine pour le changement social et comportemental. Il a plus de 30 années d'expérience dans la conception, la mise en œuvre et le suivi-évaluation du SBC. Il a travaillé longtemps avec l'UNFPA, l'UNICEF et aussi l'USAID. Il est le vice-président du groupe de travail sur la communication en santé de l'IMCR. Il est également en charge du plaidoyer de toutes les organisations que je viens de mentionner. Et professeur Adebayo nous fera en tout cas l'honneur de faire l'ouverture de cette session. Et donc, vraiment, c'est avec grand plaisir que je l'annonce. Et on vous passe le micro, professeur Adebayo. Merci.
Thank you for the introduction. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good day to all of you, wherever you are. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome you to this symposium. My task is very simple. It is to welcome all the participants to the symposium. And as at this point, we have already, I think we're 199, we're clocking 200 participants for this symposium. This meeting, this symposium, is a culmination of some kind of intense conversations that we have been having as a secretariat since early in the year, and we would like to just first and foremost thank all those who have been part of the process. And then I'm sure all of you are happy that we are at this point today. Let me also start by noting that the international development space has been undergoing different kinds of changes for the last 20 years. Particularly, we've seen changes in the ODA, we've seen changes, cuts in development aid from various, some of the classic donors, some of the governments and some of the agencies. But this year we have seen phenomenal changes in the aid architecture with the killing of USAID early in the new year. We've seen very tragic and drastic changes that call to attention the focus of our work and how we need to be doing this work a little bit differently. We've seen these changes affect sectors, programs, projects, themes, countries, interventions, name it. It's affected different kinds of areas. And these are some of the things that we'll be teasing out and looking at during this symposium. But in particular, we've seen these changes affect our work in social and behavioral change. We know that our work is fundamental, it's pivotal, it's the anchor of all development assistance intervention because we focus on the social and behavioral dimensions of the work. And we know that these changes have really affected our work. Funding, we also know that has been problematic even within the traditional aid architecture. It has been inconsistent. It has been contingent on some whims and caprices. It has been haphazard in many respects. And these are some of the reasons why perhaps we need to start thinking about social and behavior change function and funding differently. Even now, it is more so. This is the rationale for our symposium. What do we want to achieve? We want to analyze the impact of the current funding shifts on our work, especially in Africa. We want to critically examine past funding structures, approaches, and strategies to determine major lessons that we have learned. We want to interrogate, we want to explore, we want to fashion out alternative funding and financing arrangements and structures for our work. And we also hope that at the end, we'll be able to develop a strong and robust roadmap for how to fund SBC in the future. To help us with this, we have designed a very creative program with different kinds of panels and panelists to be able to help interrogate this. And I believe that they will be doing justice to it. So I suggest that we all take advantage of the panelists and the various kinds of conversations that we will be having. To close, we need a new practical, innovative, and sustainable strategies for funding and financing SBC. We need also to effectively reposition SBC for consistent, resilient funding. I believe as an African, we need to challenge the political, cultural, economic structures in Africa to make them more responsive to effective funding so that we avoid the dependency syndrome that had characterized our previous operations in terms of how SBC is funded. And we also need to challenge ourselves as practitioners to embrace new strategies, new modalities for what I call efficiency, effectiveness, and economy of the kind of the funds that we are getting. At the end of this conversation, we hope that we will come up with different strategies and we'll be able to take these strategies to the Global SBC Summit taking place in Panama in 2026. So on that note, I welcome everybody to this conversation, to this symposium, and I trust that we will be able to have a very robust, interesting conversation around the issues, and we'll be able to channel the recommendations and some of the lessons that we're learning to higher levels, even at a global level. Thank you very much, and welcome to the symposium.
Thank you very much. Thank you, dear, for your introduction. Merci beaucoup pour ce mot introductif. Je voudrais juste rappeler aux participants que cette session est bilingue et que nous avons une option d'interprétation. N'hésitez pas à switcher le bouton selon votre langue. Et on a eu beaucoup de plaisir vraiment à recevoir ce mot de bienvenue de professeur Adebayo. Et donc, à présent, je donne la parole à Titus. Merci beaucoup pour la suite de l'intervention. Merci. À présent, nous allons poursuivre cette fois-ci avec professeur Ali Awin. Et professeur Ali Awin est praticien du SBC depuis de nombreuses années et il a participé justement, il est membre de l'American University in Cairo en Égypte. Il est également enseignant dans la gestion aux opérations au niveau du cycle MBA. Il a dirigé la transition du Gay Earth Center vers l'école de commerce et il est membre de plusieurs conseils d'administration. Et on peut citer par exemple le CAPSI, le PNUE en Afrique et au Moyen-Orient. Donc, on a vraiment beaucoup de plaisir à le recevoir aujourd'hui parce qu'il va nous introduire justement sur la voie à suivre pour assurer le progrès vers le développement malgré les contraintes et de l'aide aujourd'hui. Et vraiment, merci beaucoup. Et Mr. Ali Awin, à vous le micro. Merci. Est-ce que professeur Ali Awin est avec nous? Je viens de constater que dans le chat, certains participants ont des soucis pour la traduction. Vous pourrez me confirmer que c'est fonctionnel chez vous? Please let me know in the chat if there's any issues related to the translation and which language you don't get actually.
English.
Okay.
Yes, I can. Hello.
Hello,
Apologies. I was trying to
Okay.
unmute and show myself. Can I share my presentation? Would you allow me to share my presentation?
Yeah, Professor, can you just let me check if the translation is working right now?
Okay, sure.
Okay, we're trying to fix it. Can you just let in the chat if now you can get a translation in English?
In French.
Okay, so we'll try to fix it. The next presentation will be in English. So please just keep your question in the chat. Oh, okay, you can hear in English. Okay, I think it's fixed now. Okay, thank you, Professor. So I think we can go on with your presentation.
I'm trying to share my presentation. How do I do that? Share, okay. Share. Okay, hold on. Okay, can you see it?
Yes, we can see it.
Good, good. Okay, let me start. I just wanted to tell you first that the topic is very timely, and it's not just since January, since the US aid was basically demolished. I participate in a conference called the African Philanthropy Conference. Last year, it was about new frontiers in African philanthropy. And the major theme was about developing the financing development. How would philanthropy play a role? This year, almost a month ago, the title of the conference, the African Philanthropy Conference #6, was about sustainable finance for development in the majority world. Now, obviously, the term implies majority world implies basically what they refer to as the South, or non-Westerner, non-North American. Now, let's start by going, because what really prompted the whole thing was the US aid cut. Now, the US aid is a major player. You have a reservoir of fund. More than 30% of it were depleted, were taken away. Those were billions in grants, technical assistance that were used for specific things sometimes, like HIV/AIDS, malaria, maternal health. They were used to promote democracy and governance, and I'm putting a big question mark on this, and I'll explain it later. They were supporting also agriculture programs. They were also, in general, responding to humanitarian crisis. Now, the value, we can sort of talk about it and discuss it, but hey, there was a big amount of money. And when this was cut, for example, humanitarian aid in areas like Sudan was halted. So it is a major thing. So its absence would require that other sources of funds will have to just sort of jump in and play the role. Now, alternatives are probably, I'm going to start by classical, by just showing you what other things exist. And then I'm going to take you to a completely different narrative. So when you talk about alternatives, obviously there are other countries. The UK, for example, the German has the GIZ, the KfW, the Canadian, the French has the AFD, the JICA, Japan. China started to sort of crowd in, the EU. Now, there is a big question mark. Can those organizations provide grants, concessional loans, technical assistance to fill the gap? And the answer is probably no. And I'll tell you one of the major reasons a big no is there in a few minutes. There are also multilateral banks. I put the African Development Bank first because it's Africa's. World Bank, the European Investment Bank. There's also the Islamic Development Bank. And those, they provide long-term financing, and they usually do it through the government. The government does it. Now, you also have philanthropy. The philanthropy, there are many more than what I put here. And what I put here, typically those are international. I did not put foundations that are Africans, like the Dangote, the Sawiris Foundation here in Egypt, et cetera. But those guys tend to focus on specific things, and they are also affected also by whatever is happening in the US. There's also private capital. Private capital, we talk about impact investment, blended finance, public-private partnership. And those guys tend to de-risk private investments in developing markets. So they tend to be for the big guys, that type of mechanisms. There are local banks, and I just listed some of them. And again, they tend also to work with the government and regional blocs like the African Union. Now, let's stop here, and I want to alert you. In general, you should expect less multilateral or cross-border finance funding for different reasons. It's not just the US. All of a sudden, the European countries would have to participate in NATO with 5% of their national income. Now, this 5%, this means that most embassies of like the Netherlands, for example, in most African countries, are not going to have the change, the finance, to enable them to do little projects here or there. And that applies across. The other thing I wanted to sort of alert you, nobody gives you money for free. There is always a hidden agenda behind it. And most probably this agenda is different than yours. Now, what I'm going to try to sort of lead you to until the end is that there are very little option that we have, but to start depending on local, national, perhaps regional resources. Because multilateral, the way we used to in the past, is going to change. Or if it's not going to change, it's going to carry with it a huge agenda that we'll have to follow. Okay, now I see an opportunity. The big opportunity here first is that you will have a shift toward local ownership and solutions. Remember, we talked about you'll have to shift to local financing, local ownership. That's going to reduce donor dependency. But mind you, this will take a longer term. But then you could be aligned with 2063 more than what you're aligned with SDGs, for example, that's going to end in 5 years. You're talking about 2063, which is Africa. So what is needed? You need your own agenda. And I'll explain to you what I mean by an agenda. An agenda, there is a part of it which is your own purpose, your own credo, your own passion. Now, there is a part of it also which is about strategy. And I'm going to tell you more about it, how you're going to achieve this. Now, the interesting thing is that having an agenda itself is not enough without being able to finance it, to fund it. And if it is a very local agenda, this means that the financing, the funding, a big part of it, a big chunk of it, has to be also local. Remember, development is local. Development is not a global thing. Development is about local. Now, I want to alert you that it's not just an issue of financing. It's an issue of mindset. Mindset. When you talk about decolonizing, own agenda, you have to get out of the mindset that I need USAID or the French or whatever the hell it is to be able to finance my own development. This is part of decolonizing. How do you expect to decolonize if you still take money from what used to be your colonizer or entities that are not interested in your own agenda, but they have their own agenda? A big part of this also is democratizing development. It cannot be by the elitist. It cannot be top-bottom. There has to be a right balance between top-bottom and bottom. Now, so obviously I'm leading you toward community-based development. This is about local voices, about systems and resources that are more likely to succeed, scale, and sustain itself. This will be sustained. If you develop a community, this is not like pouring water in an arid land. This is an analogy for the aid, the multilateral or the cross-border aid. And then when you stop the water, the weed that has grown, the lush green weed, it will burn out. You have to develop deep roots. It takes longer time, but it's more sustainable. Deep root is about community-based development. This is what we need to do. And the idea is not to replace those resources with external aid. I mean, sometimes you need to blend, you need to build, because there is a transition period. You need to think in terms of infrastructure, platforms, community infrastructure organizations to enable community-owned funding. This is critical. It's often underutilized engines of development in Africa and worldwide. But for us, I think in the long term, this is what we need to be doing. Now, I'm going to talk about two concepts and then I'm going to wrap up. The first thing is about social solidarity. We all have social solidarity. You can call it Ubuntu, you can call it Harambe, you could call it Takaful. It comes in different variations. And it all boils down to the same thing. And it's beyond, by the way, it's not just about charity and humanitarian. It's also about self-reliance. It's also about self-reliance, helping youth rely on themselves. And this is built in. This is built in our culture. And it comes through different ways. I mean, it doesn't have to be money. It could be a voluntary labor. It could be communal fundraising. There is a very interesting concept that I've learned from communicating with the guys in South Africa, WITS. It's basically Annan Fowler, and he calls it the poor philanthropist. We're talking about 100 million. Okay, each one of them is kind of paid $10, for example, a year. Now we're gonna get handsome amount of money that a deep pocket is not gonna get you. Now the issue here is that you need to have a platform to enable this kind of an activity, and you have issues about governance. How do you govern this platform? But once you do that, then exactly what I'm talking about will happen. Faith-based, the reason I mentioned faith-based is that we all in Africa, whether I'm talking about Islam, about Christianity, in different variations, we have a very strong religious faith-based charity. And you need to sort of provide, maybe sort of enable it a little bit. Instead of focusing on education, health, humanitarian, maybe we could sort of expand it to include self-reliance, enabling youth to start their own enterprises, their own little companies. But the reason I mentioned it after community, because it's very much communal. It's very much embedded in the communities. So what do we need to do? And again, remember, this is social marketing. You need to share the knowledge, to mobilize the activities, actions, promoting the way we're talking about, changing the mindset. How do you change the mindset? This takes long effort, takes very much dedicated social marketing to amplify local voices in decision-making, to promote transparency in local governance. Once you start using more and more the base of the pyramid, once we start doing more and more grassroots, you're going to find that you need more and more governance. I stop here, and if I have a minute, I just want to sort of stress a few things. The first thing I wanted to sort of stress is that you have to think in terms of diversity of ideas. I'm going to stop my presentation. Diversity of ideas. Never think that there is a one road to salvation. There aren't. There are many roads. I mean, I know that in school, especially business schools, they teach you there is an optimal solution. No, sir. There is a portfolio of solutions. And you have to think in this way. You have to think in terms of portfolio of solutions that takes multitude of ideas and multitudes of participants. Creating an own agenda is very critical. This implies that I'll have to be able to, at least to start it with local funds. If I'm going to get funding from international donors or international philanthropy, this is fine. But there cannot be a diversion from my own agenda. This is my credo. This is what I need to achieve. And clearly, the wellness of the average person has to be central in this. When you talk about how you're going to go about this, the old way of thinking that there is a strategy and you're going to know from now until 10 years to go what you need to do is old. And it doesn't go with a very erratic, perhaps dynamic environment. You really have to think in terms of emerging strategies, which implies that you're exploring and you're allowing adaptability. I stop it here and I thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Ali.
I'm gonna stop the show. Okay, so stop the show.
Thank you very much. I'm a co-facilitator with Billy, and welcome to everyone. My name is Titus Motsabi, and I'm based in Zimbabwe. Thank you, Prof, for the shift to self-empowerment, local ownership, dreams, passions, strategies, and own agendas. It was also very encouraging to be reminded that development is local, not global, and it's a question of mindset. I like this because social and behavior change starts with us, the practitioners. And there are transitions within funding as well as the behavior that leads to self-empowerment as well as self-liberation. So those were critical points for future self-financing anchored on self-liberation and leveraging on our cultures and social context to be strong and to be locally, economically powerful to drive the agendas which we will have identified for ourselves. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my singular pleasure to welcome Alan from Uganda. I will say a few words of note about Alan. Alan Kasuja holds a law degree from the University of London, is a celebrated student of Africa's history and geopolitics. Alan was named one of the 100 most influential Africans in 2023. Alan is a creator of Africa Daily, a widely downloaded Africa-focused podcast, and a global advocate for Africans owning and shaping their own narratives and destinies. Alan is a former lead presenter of BBC Newsday. Welcome, Alan, and kindly make your presentation on Beyond the Headlines. Thank you.
I wonder if you can see me at all at the moment. Can you all see me or hear me?
We can hear you, but we can't see you yet.
All
Now
right,
we can
I think
see
I'm
you.
good now. Okay. This has been a bit of a struggle trying to be seen and to be heard because of all sorts of technical problems. Thank you very much to the organizers. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you. My name is Suja. I am Ugandan. I'm currently based in Uganda. I have been based in London for the last 13 years, but I'm very happy to be back home. So the topic that I was given to talk about quite interesting. How is a development story told? And to be honest, this is going to be the shortest presentation so that I don't bore you too much. The truth of the matter is that development story is not being told. Certainly not the African story. When you sit where I have been sitting for the last so many years, you find that Africa is not represented, and that is not just one of those things that are talked about. It's a fact that not many Africans are heard or seen. The African intelligentsia is not front and center of talking about the African reality. So there will be journalists parachute to African situations who lack context and who lack the local knowledge to be able to give stories justice. Now, that is a big problem. And when we created Africa Daily, a part of it was a frustration. I used to do a live radio show called Newsday, which is the biggest breakfast show in the world. And the frustration came from the fact that an important story developed, an important story made the headlines, but because it's a live broadcast, you only had 2 minutes to tell that story. And this is on the biggest platform that story could ever be told, because it's live radio. Now, the problem with that is you miss the nuance, you miss the context, you miss the details, you miss the reality, you miss the people who live that reality. And so we created Africa Daily, where we were basically saying, number one, and this was an insistence on my part, I do not want to hear anybody who is not from Africa, who is not African, talking about African issues. Number one. Number two, we want to do one African story and unpack it so that we can tell it comprehensively, so that we can tell it with all the nuance, with all the corners, bring African voices to the fore. Now, you who is involved in a development world, who is doing very important work, faces a bigger challenge because, first of all, the language you use in your interaction, not just with each other, but with the rest of us, just makes no sense to us. I don't understand what you guys are saying half the time, personally. And I am a senior journalist of some repute. But that is partly because it seems like a little world locked out there where we can talk stakeholders and talk about all these other things that do not fit into normal conversations. You just say your own things, you enter a meeting, and it's all these things, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, what are these guys saying? What are you talking about? And then it feels to me like you guys are just protecting your jobs, just, being, if we bring people in, they're going to take these opportunities. That's a real problem, to be honest with you. And the reason why it's a problem is that story will only remain amongst you guys. So it is important that the rest of the world gets to know what you're talking about, what you're doing. But that opportunity is missed because of this. Oh, so the stakeholders benchmarked. Why don't you just make normal people? Why don't you just say, why don't you give me? And the one question you must always answer when you're approaching a guy like me is, what is the story? I don't care that you have released a new product. That is not a story. Everybody's releasing a new product every day. The story should be that a woman in Malawi can now protect herself from HIV because there is this new thing that she can deploy. But that I'm interested in doing. I'm interested in doing that story. Don't tell me that, we have allocated $1 million. Nobody cares about that. Nobody cares that you have released $10 billion. No. Talk to me about the impact on the communities, about what's actually going on the ground. What are people doing? What is the impact of what you're doing? That is where the real story lies. It's not in all these boardroom things that you're doing, all these meetings you're having. It is in the reality that people are living. That is where the real story is, and that is what you should be concentrating on. So, here is a key part. This is, if you take away anything from this rambling of mine, it should be that, number one, tell your own stories. Actually, this idea that someone from the BBC, CNN, blah, 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 is interested in your story is delusional. When you're down here and drawing budgets, make sure you have a department that tells your story. And call me. yakasuja@gmail.com. Call me, write to me, tell me what your challenge is, and we shall help pack it. I shall bring you someone in your country to help you tell that story better. Because that is the only solution to your predicament. I'm not interested in statistics. I'm not interested in graphs, because those are not interesting things. The real story is that this young girl has managed to stop pregnancy amongst teenagers in her community, or these people in Zimbabwe. There's a lovely story we did from Zimbabwe about a bench, people dealing with mental health, because these women were able to sit down on a bench with another woman and talk about their issues. Those are the real stories, not we were given a no. Okay, lastly, storytelling should be the core, probably the most important part of your work, because that is what stands out. And if that story gets traction in your country, in the communities in which you live, in the communities in which you're working, then the rest of the world will sit up and listen and watch. Otherwise, nobody's interested in your story. Nobody's telling your story. Nobody's telling your development story. It's about time you learned how to tell your own story, number one. Number two, nobody's coming to save you. Nobody's coming to save you from that predicament of not being able to tell your own story. Number three, you are your own savior. You are the one who you have been waiting for to tell your story. So that concludes my submission. I don't know if it's been useful. I hope it has been useful. But ultimately, the key thing is tell your own story. And when you tell it, leave out all this nonsense, all this vocabulary from the development world, because frankly, nobody cares about it, and it has absolutely no mileage anywhere. I thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Alan. On retient ces propos. Il faut absolument que nous prenons notre responsabilité à retenir et à raconter notre propre histoire et pour créer justement le changement au sein de nos communautés. Et je pense que c'est vraiment une approche très utile dans le cadre du travail que nous faisons, de pouvoir susciter justement des interactions et le changement positif à travers des histoires réelles et des histoires qui sont ancrées à nos cultures et à nos valeurs. Et donc là, je fais la transition pour annoncer à présent notre cher intervenant, Monsieur Hippolyte Ouamba, qui se fait appeler Hippo et qui vient du Burkina Faso. Il est animateur d'un sondage interactif. Il a travaillé pendant longtemps au bureau régional de l'USAID. Il est membre fondateur de la section SBC, AS-SBC du Burkina Faso. Il a également travaillé auprès de plusieurs organisations telles que FHI 360, URAC et Helen Keller. Et aujourd'hui, il va animer avec nous une session interactive sur le Minimeter qui nous permettra, en tout cas à tous les participants ici présents, de pouvoir partager leurs idées et sur le défi en lien avec le financement. Monsieur Hippolyte Ouamba, soyez le bienvenu et le micro est à vous. Merci.
Thank you, Billy, for this introduction. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session, which is a quick survey to catch your perception on the founding crisis we face it now, and the priority of adaptation, and also, and finally, the future prospect for SBC program. So, to capture the essence of this, of your thoughts on this topic, we invite you to respond to answer to 3 or 4 questions, and we'll use the Mentimeter. So you can put set your response in the chat box. The link is already posted, and you can send your response there. Certainly, for the first question, we know that all of us are has been affected by the global crisis of funding cutting, but each of us has his own perception of this situation. So, according to you, what word best describe the impact of funding cuts on SBC program? Please set your response in the link posted in the chat box. What word best describe the impact of funding cuts on SBC program? Yes. Okay. So okay. Okay, thank you. As you say, we got a word cloud, a beautiful cloud, and we can go to the next question. Thank you. Okay, so for the second question, we want to know what are the top three area where SPC program should prioritize funding adaptation efforts. And you can go in the chat box and set your response there. We have just 30 seconds for this response. This is a multiple response possible, so you can find three response. You can drag the three response possible for each of us. So, thank you. This is great. We'll move to the third question. This is an open one. We want to know now, what innovative funding solution have you explored or are considering to sustain SBC program? This is an open question. You can go ahead and propose your response. Thank you, all of you.
Alors, merci à tous pour ces éléments de réponse. Vraiment, je pense cela témoigne justement de l'intérêt que nous avons pour le travail que nous faisons et l'engagement aussi de chaque acteur ici présent. Et merci en tout cas, Monsieur Hippolyte Rwamba, d'avoir animé cette session. Je pense que les résultats de ce millimètre seront partagés après justement cette réunion. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Hippolyte Rwamba. So now we are going to the next speaker. Vous pouvez juste couper votre vidéo, s'il vous plaît, Monsieur Hippolyte.
Maybe I was
Okay.
on mute. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hippolyte. So now we are moving to the next speaker, and that is Miss Nicole Capesi, and she is a seasonal public health on SBC specialist over 12 years of experience. She has been instrumental in shaping national SBC strategies, and also she most recently served as a technical advisor in USAID. And Ms. Nichols holds a master in community development and project management. So she will be the moderator of the next panel that will be focusing on donor perspectives and also understanding of what's going wrong on the financing system, and also to talk about the adaptive strategies for SBC sustainability. So thank you, Ms. Nicole Capesi, and you have the floor. Thank you very much. Can you get us Miss Nicole, please? Okay, so I need to, okay. Let me do that, please. Okay, I think you can go on now, Miss Nicole.
Yes, thank you so much, Billy. Hopefully you can all hear me. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are, everyone. And thank you for joining this session of the ASSBC Symposium. As introduced, my name is Nicole Capesi, and it is a privilege to moderate this very timely panel discussion titled Navigating the Funding Crisis, Adapting and Innovating for Sustainable Social and Behavior Change in Africa. This conversation matters because, as we all know, durable behavior change takes time, longer than most grant cycles allow. Yet recent funding cuts have exposed just how fragile our work can be, while also creating opportunities to innovate, localize, and build more resilient systems. So as Billy said, our discussion today follows a very simple arc. We'll start with donor realities and priorities to understand what really drives decisions. We'll then reframe the structural issues in current funding models. And then finally, we'll hear perspectives on sustaining our gains and exploring alternative financing approaches. I'm joined today by 3 speakers, and each speaker will have 7 minutes. As they speak, I invite you, our audience, to use the chat feature to share any reflections or any questions you may have. My colleagues and I will compile these and will address as many as possible during the Q&A at the end. It is now my honor to introduce our first speaker, Ms. Stephanie Thorland from the Global Alliance for SBC. Stephanie has led global partnerships and resource mobilization for SBC, and she brings deep insight into donor thinking. She will speak on donor perspectives, talking to us about some of the current priorities, what they are, what are some of the decision drivers, and the future of SBC funding. Stephanie will help us understand what issues donors are now prioritizing, how they decide what gets funded, and importantly, what good SBC looks like from a donor lens. Stephanie, welcome. The floor is yours. Billy, I request if you can unmute Stephanie, and I will then give you the hint about the next person so you can unmute them as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I did it.
Thank you, Billy, and thank you, Nicole. Hello, everyone. I'm Stephanie Toland, and I will say up front, yes, I don't work for a donor and I don't have a crystal ball. But yes, earlier this year, following the closure of USAID and major funding reductions from other donors, a group of us in the Global Alliance for SBC conducted a donor landscape review. We all know that USAID played an outsized role in funding SBC, and we wanted to assess our prospects as a sector looking forward. As Adebayo said, we have suffered from a dependency syndrome, and Ali's encouragement of a decolonized mindset and Alan's emphasis of being your own savior are essential today. But that said, I'm here to speak about the donors. So across a couple of dozen donors, 10 priority issue areas relevant to SBC emerged. The capacity of several of these donors is now diminished, including most of the UN agencies, but their priorities remain relevant, so we included them. These priority themes, 10 of them, are health and health system strengthening, climate change, nutrition, agriculture, democracy and governance and peace building, risk communication and community engagement, gender issues, including work on gender norms and gender equality, family planning, neglected tropical diseases and WASH, and child rights and health. Now, why are these the priorities now? Food and health are universal human needs that must be supported. Donors are going to keep showing up for them. These also relate to complex national scale systems to be built and refined in many countries. They're also tied to increasing GDP and boosting the economy. And in our capitalist and increasingly conservative world, these factors will continue to attract attention and investment. Also, climate change is a universal threat, which is almost universally agreed upon. This includes natural disasters and disease outbreaks that are realities we must prepare for as well. The Scandinavian donors in particular are actively acknowledging that these threats are larger for poor, low-resource populations and regions, and this is showing up in their strategies. For gender-related issues, support for marginalized groups, and democracy efforts, some politically progressive donor countries are trying to fill in where the US and others have removed substantial funding. And some donors remain dedicated to more specialty issues like family planning and NTDs. So the question now facing us is, how will they decide what SBC to fund? And I have to be blunt and say, I don't think that they will fund SBC per se. Rather, they will fund projects that show clearly how a package of interventions will lead to measurable achievement of the donor's objectives. That remains the same. We must be sure that SBC is integrated throughout and across those project pieces. Now that's for larger scale projects, and we must also think in smaller scale. My colleague Sarah Jewett will be speaking more on that. So what would good SBC look like to donors now? And I've got 2 points on this. One leans more into SBC and what we know and love in our language and how we speak, and one leans more away from it. And I'll explain more about each. So leaning into SBC, how SBC should be positioned to attract more investment? I think we need to try to acknowledge upfront the long-term pace and stages of behavior change by promising outcomes that are tiered according to the stages of behavior change for the midpoint and final evaluations, so that donors can see clearly how adoption of those target objectives increases with time and according to and moving across these stages. And also that with continued investment and time, these impacts will increase. You should have a reasonable plan for what that continued investment strategy would need to include to fully achieve the goal too. Now, leaning away from SBC is really where you see opportunities to localize, integrate, and innovate, and not necessarily design an SBC project, but in terms of localizing, really focusing on strengthening local capacity. so that communities and institutions own the work, or locally specific resilience and climate change adaptation strategies that are very specific. On the integration, this is really the thinking that SBC shouldn't be considered a standalone strategy. It is a set of tools to apply to a project and a problem. Combining it with commodities, capacity building, and/or services makes a compelling solution. We should consider SBC as able to contribute across every building block of a system. It is a powerful set of tools, and this applies to health systems and others. We need to embed SBC in these systems and programs. As Kara Tereski, formerly of FHI 360 and now running her own consulting, recently said, we need a shift from short-term wins to long-term systems gains. On the final point of that, innovate, this applies to both our programming and our business development efforts. We need to develop or elevate low-cost, horizontal, holistic, integrated approaches. This includes community-centered responses to crises that are low cost. We need to bring SBC into some new focus areas where it hasn't been as utilized, such as anti-corruption, democracy and governance. We need to connect with the behavioral insights and science realm in a more intentional and less competitive way. And on business development, we do need to diversify SBC funding, considering less conventional donors. This includes CSR, wealthy individuals and diaspora, impact investment funds. The constraints and decision-making criteria of donors right now. There's 3 points here that I'll conclude with. As we all know, SBC is typically seen as a nice to have, and so is usually the first to be cut when compared with services, commodities, humanitarian response efforts. Now more than ever, we must be more than just messaging and more than a campaign. We must integrate, apply systems thinking, and convincingly connect the dots between several elements of a multi-pronged approach that has SBC integrated throughout it. Make clear to donors why this combination produces those measurable, attributable results that lead to those intended outcomes. This will sell. Funds and budgets are now reduced and unreliable due to conservative politics and power in many places. The expectation now is that countries and NGOs and SBC must do more with less. Always a fun challenge. So this means we must design for high return on investment and really ensure attribution of results back to our work. And we have to drop bells and whistles from how we might ideally be developing projects and interventions. Really focus on what's driving the outcomes that you're promising. And lastly, conservative politics holding power sadly means that less policy and funding exists that actively cares about humans, about children, about marginalized groups. This is the reality. So if these are your missions and your focus areas, you really must build relationships with donors that hold those same values. Building coalitions with like-minded organizations is how we will continue to move on these issues and priorities. Do not take a competitive mindset with your fellow resistance fighters, but find ways to be stronger together. That concludes my talk.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for that candid look at, donor priorities, laying them out for us, and just the reminder that SBC needs to be more than what it is today, more than messaging, a stark reminder that it must be embedded into our systems to be seen as essential. So thank you very much, Stephanie. Our second speaker is Dr. Sarah Jewett. She is a senior lecturer at the University of Witwatersrand and a recognized leader in SBC capacity strengthening. Dr. Sarah will speak on the structural issues and how we can rethink SBC funding models to unlock sustainable impact. She'll unpack how traditional funding models have undermined long-term change and share lessons and innovative approaches to bridge the gap between donor realities and sustainable SBC. Dr. Sarah, over to you. And I understand that we are now able to share video and unmute. So if you're in a position to, please turn your video on. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Nicole. All those things I've been asked to do in 7 minutes, I'll try. But thank you to all who have joined. I see a great number of people, colleagues and friends. It's overwhelming and honor to be asked to look at this question. And the question really I was asked to look at was around the structure of financing to begin with, and to see what lessons we can take as we build off of what we've already heard from Prof. Ali Almni, Alan and Stephanie and others who have been contributing. So in terms of structure, we've already heard from our opening remarks by Prof. Adebayo and others that though the most recent funding cuts have been dramatic, unprecedented, both in scale and speed, there have been problems in the aid architecture for social and behavior change for a long time. And in thinking about that, I would like to highlight 4 key elements about that structure that I think we need to reflect on, as there are still funding mechanisms that might continue to mirror some of these problems. So as we're looking forward and taking to heart the need for adaptation, the need for diversification and all of that, I do want to highlight sort of 4 hallmarks of what has been problematic beyond just the basic dependency. And one of those things has been the fact that a lot of the funding up till now has been very large budget and project-based. The 3-year funding for a 5-year project for a 20-year problem, as the joke used to go. Those projects have, in their nature, forced us to oftentimes step away from the local contexts because of their size and scale, and also step away from ways of relating to communities, being respectful of community processes or knowledges, just because of their size. Also, because of the size and complexity, what has happened is that many of these projects have been managed by very technically able organizations, but organizations and leadership that has not been based in our countries, and certainly not the communities in which many of our projects have worked. And what that has meant is a disconnect when projects ended of not having to face those you're walking away from. And I think we cannot undermine the importance of relationship and trust in these cycles of projects, the projectization of change processes. So I think that's a key thing to just consider as we talk about the importance of relationships. Also, the kind of funding mechanisms that we were introduced to ended up, because of the economies, a whole industry, ended up creating a distorted human resource population where many of our greatest talents were taken on board in these projects as program managers and doing wonderful things. But now with the removal of those funding sources, those same people, many who are on this call, are finding it difficult to find something similar to which they can pivot, because it's just that industry is changed. And then finally, because of the dynamics of projects, what has happened over the years is a lot of competition between actors who historically may have worked together, where they were fighting for the same kind of resources. And so that has, over time again, created a dynamic of distrust and broken down what might have been more locally relevant kind of ground up movements. So I've been asked to look at this in the context of what can we look for in terms of sustainable impact? And when I think of sustainable SBC impact, I'm not talking about the sustaining of our projects, but actually the sustaining or resilience of the work that we do. And this really goes to the heart of what Alan was saying. Like, let's just be real. What are you doing? What value are you adding? Can we be real about that? And so about 13 years ago, I was part of a process where we looked at organizations who had had funding cuts. And we looked at how they were doing a couple of years later. And there were 3 key insights, and you're going to hear echoes of what people have already talked about, but there were 3 key insights in what helped people not only survive, limp along, but really thrive post those funding cuts. And the first was mindset. So Prof. Ali Aouni already mentioned this, an adaptive mindset, where from the get-go organizations recognized funding and dependency, it was all very temporary. That mindset was one which really sought to invest in relationships, in building those stories that Alan was talking about, in building systems, and not just building individual capacities, but organizational capacities, instead of going just to scale or creating salary structures that couldn't be sustained once that funding was gone. So those were the organizations that really were able to continue after funding cuts. And so that mindset shift, I think, is really critical. Another thing that was common across those that were thriving was their ability to tell their story. And part of that story was the kind of stories Alan's talking about, the story of the person, the impact, but also those organizations understood that there are different stories needed for different people in our ecosystems. So governments needed to know that what you were doing was cost effective. It could be integrated within existing systems and so on. A community needed to know that you were going to be there through thick and thin. Donors needed to know that you had the ability to meet their indicators and their agendas, as well as anything else you might want to be doing. So that was key. So having a clear story or a clear value proposition. And the final thing was where they were anchored. Organizations that were anchored on the donor and adapting to whatever the donor's agenda was, a lot of them shut their doors. Those who were anchored in community and clear value, a clear agenda, are those that were thriving and continued to find ways, creative ways, to maintain their impact. And I'm not, again, talking about just jobs, but impact, being able to do what they did best, because that is where their hearts were. So I think those three things are key. Again, I'm just going to restate: the adaptive mindset, the ability to tell a clear story about what you're doing, what you're about, and that can be evidence, it can be M&E, but it also is stories, and then anchoring the agenda and the organization on that local community. So with my last minute or so, just a few things to think about as we think about the context that we're in, and where we can invest, and different strategies we can use as we look for different types of funding. I think core is keeping at heart what we're doing and what is valuable to that. But different resource mobilization tactics need to be revisited and maybe re-anchored. And I know the next speaker will speak to this too, but a few thoughts I've had are, as we look local, national, or regional, we need to also acknowledge that we're not the only ones who have had funding cuts. So we should be using our skills in social and behavior change and communication to work together with partners, to advocate to reduce, for instance, the fixed cost of medication, to ensure that if we can cut down costs on those things, that they can also invest more resources for us, for the SBC work that we do. So this could be through things like pooled procurement or social mobilization, like we did in South Africa with the Treatment Action Campaign. These are things we know how to do, and we need to go back to that. We also need to mobilize more grassroots responses. This includes our faith communities and others. We need to do, if communities are going to invest in us, it's because they value what we do. If what we were doing was not valued, it was seen as a project, they're not going to invest in us. So let's focus on those things and find where we connect. And those partners can be government, they can be donors, but they can also be your local community members, the religious communities, and so on. We also have huge diasporas. The aid coming into Africa from our diasporas are far, far greater than any donor agencies ever have been. We need to be talking about what value we bring to the communities which they have left and where they still have connections. Engaging in not just multinationals and other businesses which have their own agendas, but also local businesses who have a vested interest in their communities thriving is really important. And finally, I think others have already said this, but aligning more closely with our government service delivery agendas and others to make sure that we are integral to that, and they see and we make the point of how we add value there is essential. So I'm going to end by just saying that this is an opportunity for us to break down our learned dependencies and rethink power dynamics in a way that we step away from maybe where we've leaned too heavily on some relationships and priorities at the expense of others, to reset those priorities and really invest in our relationships with each other. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sarah. You know, rethinking our learned dependencies was something that struck out for me. But thank you so much for challenging us, one, to rethink not just where the resources come from, but how we as a community anchor ourselves in adaptive mindsets, clear value propositions, and of course, strong relationships. So thank you so much for that. Our final speaker is Nana Agyei. He is the CEO of Blackstar Brokerage, and he brings a valuable perspective from the private sector, where his work has focused on building sustainable partnerships and innovative financing solutions. So today, Nana will share insights on adaptive strategies and alternative financing for development. He'll explore what lessons we as the SBC community can borrow from private sector approaches and how we might blend diverse funding sources. And what bold new models could help us sustain our gains well beyond donor cycles. Welcome, Nana. You can also, I think, access your video. So if you could switch it on for us, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole, and maximum respect to Stephanie and Sarah, my panelists. And it's been a very insightful session. I still remember and have the reflection of Prof. Ali's idea about mindset. Kindly confirm for me if you can hear me, and with your indulgence, I will share a slide that I'd like to run my presentation through.
We can hear. Please carry on.
Great. And please confirm if you can see my slide.
We can see your slide. Thank you.
Great. So I think the foundation has been set very well. And I think the whole concept is to talk about how we can adapt strategies that will let development. In this context, I'm referring a lot more to development, but it's also focusing on SBC, but to a larger extent on general development, looking at how we can do things through markets or diaspora capital and issues of realigning policy innovations. The tenets, we need to agree that, for instance, this contest is referred to Africa. And when it comes to Africa and sub-Saharan Africa, we've been through this before on the macroeconomic level and the general economic level. We've been through this stage before. In the 80s all the way to the early 2000s, we were in the era that on the sovereign level, we were getting grants, we were getting free aids and all that, to the point that we migrated to the point where we needed to be on our own and also have our own funding. So we've moved from the point where in states like Ghana, we had over 30 sub-Saharan African countries getting HIPIC support and all others. Then we moved to the era where economies needed to borrow on their own, where economies needed to get their own funding. And like the quote says, when the aid was shrinking and when the aid was cut, states needed to be resilient, and they did that through innovation. The story has not been all that glossy. It is not the all positive story. There have been some pluses and minuses to this approach, but here's the thing: countries after aid cuts decided to move on by borrowing and using other approaches. Later on in my presentation, I will talk about those ones as well. Then the other, I call these painful facts, because even organizations like UN are being affected by the aid cuts, because you have the key champions of aid like US and EU realigning, and also, for want of a better expression, cutting.
Please, Nana, can you put your screen on full, please, so that everyone can see?
Nana, you've also muted yourself. Kindly unmute.
Just give me a moment to sort them out, and please let me know if it's been sorted.
Okay.
Hello?
Yes, Nana?
Please confirm for me if it's been sorted out.
Not yet. You're still not on full screen.
You want to go into slideshow mode.
Perfect. Please go ahead. Nana, if you're speaking, you're on mute. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think I can be heard now.
Yes, you can. Thank you.
Great, great. So, so I spoke about the fact that even UN and major organizations were also affected by funding aid, not necessarily maybe the poor lady in Malawi who may be benefiting from it, but these are realigning of these things. So when these aids were cut to the sovereigns, they realigned by financing their budget deficits by going into markets. And in the mid-2000s, you have countries like Kenya, Ghana, Nigeria, even going to the extent of borrowing from the international capital market. And this has been touched on, so I don't need to speak a lot more about it. But the key thing here is, I'm using Ghana as an example, but this is a similar example for even the entire sub-Saharan Africa. The percentage of aid as a proportion of the revenue we organize locally is not very significant. It's way below 5%. But here's the catch: it's because of how targeted these aids were and how they were structured. That's why you have about 2% of something being cut, but you feel the aid. So this particular point, I would like to re-emphasize it, that there is a potential, there is a capacity, because what 2% was doing, if it's cut and we can feel it, then it means that if we realign, if we restructure, strategize, and if we adapt properly, we can make good out of the situation, and we wouldn't necessarily be suffering from decision from other parties. So how do we go from here? The key thing is, we are encouraging that we don't have to ignore the sovereign template. The sovereign template, I mean, where countries that were getting aid, the likes of Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, when the aids were cut, their template was they have to find their way around. Apart from their own revenues, they moved into markets to borrow and all that. The other thing is philanthropy has evolved from many stages, and currently we are talking about impact investing. So these are things we need to pay attention to. We also have to talk about the realignment of state-led programs, which I'll touch on briefly in my presentation. And for development agents like SBC and related parties, I think the level of advocacy has to be taken to a different level, because now it's not going to be aid or the modes of funding have been cut. Then my last point is we either adapt or we die. This particular slide is talking about the areas that we can look at and push. So it's not necessarily the agencies like SBC going to necessarily do this, but the advocacy and the push and the lobbying will be towards these areas. So you have issues of municipals and parastatals issuing their own investment asset to undertake certain development projects in areas of education, health, ICT, and so on. You also have securitization of earmarked funds, and this is also the same, where you have, by virtue of state laws and state regulations, certain funds are earmarked for certain purposes. How do you securitize them so that you can have the impact, you can have the development ahead of time? There's also the bit about green and sustainability, and currently these are popular themes because we all want to leave the world, even not as we met it, in a better state, so that the people who come after us would also. And the very key thing, which I think Sarah and Stephanie even touched on, is the diaspora resources. And these things can be re-engineered and remanufactured. These things can be remanufactured and re-engineered into diaspora bonds and funds. Then there's a bit about the hybrid allocation of resources. So you have people who are into philanthropy, people who are also into financing these things. The likes of the Gates Foundation and all that, they have their own foundation, but then the lobbying should be going to the point that there will be a lobby to let them redirect or reassign some of these things into the areas that we push for. So this particular slide is just giving some examples. The fact that a municipal or a parastatal can also make issuances. So there is a Ghana example. This was to fund educational infrastructure, but these monies were coming from state levies. So the concept was to issue bonds in anticipation of these receivables that will come from the state to take care of it. So there is an opportunity for agents like this to lobby for ring-fencing of certain development funds so that it can be directed into certain purposes. For instance, if there are levies in Kenya for health, these ones, because they take a longer time to manifest or to hit accounts and have impact, there can be special purpose vehicles that will be set up by the state. And this is state and private sector partnership to raise capital ahead of time to execute these. Then when the funding comes in, it will be used to finance these development agenda. And there's also the bit of securitization. This is also similar to the same concept I spoke about. This is the case where expected revenues, expected income are used ahead of time so that you use it to develop. Then the very interesting one the bit about the green financing, the green bonds and all that. There's been examples in Kenya and South Africa that they use. The idea here is to push for a lot more advocacy so that the development partners will lobby these state entities, partner private sector to allocate these fundings and adopt these strategies so that we can have the impact ahead of time. There is also the realignment of the state policies and state programs. And I have a simple example. In Ghana, there's what we call MASLOC. MASLOC is what can be likened to SBA in the US. It's a state-sponsored small business financing project. And these state-sponsored projects are used to give out loans to individuals and small businesses. However, because these are state-run, they end up becoming politicized. You can depoliticize these projects by doing wholesale lending to microfinance entities. Locally here, we call them rural and community banks or savings and loans. Then they will on-lend to the key beneficiaries, the people down there. And by so doing, the impact will be felt. There's also a Development Bank Ghana initiative here, which were also supported by funding partners like the KFW, the AFDB, and all that. The whole idea is to push down to the development sectors of the economy so that there can be impact. The point I'm making here is we can make a lot of our lobby and advocacy into these things. And I know there are examples of this even in Nigeria. There's Development Bank Nigeria. There's also the Rwandan BRD. And more importantly, the Mudra project in Kenya, which is very key and very critical. Then the diaspora funds. Usually diaspora remittances come for consumption. People are trying to build homes. People are supporting families, which is a key thing, which is also supported. But there is the potential there to lobby people in the diaspora to redirect these resources and also allocate a portion of these resources into projects that will have impact. So you can talk of housing and all that. There have been some examples in Ethiopia and there have been some examples in Nigeria that we can lobby and have people adapt. The way forward, which is a summary of all that I've spoken about, just so I don't spend much of my time, is let's have blended approach, and philanthropy has evolved. So people in this sector, SBC and the likes, you're very familiar with people who are into this. Can the lobby be for them to look at impact investing or moving funds into these market-driven solutions so that even when the funds are being cut, because these are more like commercial, so to say, there'll be motivation. So it's a lot more about partnership, high-level partnership, and it should be outcome-based to measure the impacts that will come from thereon. So the call to action is, it's been made from the previous speakers. It is obvious that we have to move from the grant dependency because the grants are no more coming. And if that is what is the way forward, we've done it before. During COVID, there was that level of urgency, sense of urgency, and it looks like it pushed innovation, it pushed for everybody to survive. My caution here is in these suggestions that we are making, the potential counterparties are not like your typical funding partners. These are counterparties that may have commercial and inspiration. So if that is what we are doing, we should be sure that the impact or the purpose is a solid one, that people will be happy that they contributed to such an impact. So the pattern word is let's adapt or die. The areas we seek to improve are ever growing. The need is not stopping. We cannot stick to one way financing or one way approach. So this is the call to action for my presentation. Thank you very much, Nicole, and apologies about the background voice.
Thank you so much, Nana, and for your presentation. Thank you for reminding us that clearly sustainability sometimes requires us to look outside of our usual lanes and to tap into new partners, new markets, and new models. So thank you so much, Nana. We have been collecting a lot of questions through the chat. I do not think we will be able to get to all of them given the time. So I will pose a question each for our panelists, and then the rest of the questions will be shared with them, and they will, be able to respond to those through their LinkedIns and, or through the ASSBC page. So please follow them and or connect with them on there, and you'll be able to see some responses to some of your questions. So I will just start with this first question, and the question goes to Stephanie. So Stephanie, we have a question here that says, how do we work with new and younger behavioral insights, private sector partners who just now are discovering that individual level approaches are not sufficient to generate change, and that small scale model programs may not work at scale? How can we ensure that our hard lessons learned in SBC translates to the new generation of programmers? Thank you.
Love the simple, straightforward questions. Thank you. I think what we want to keep in mind is, in order to connect with other sectors, this younger behavioral insights sector, I would go more in the direction of roundtables and bringing donors in and trying to find that common understanding of what we have to each contribute in order to achieve those outcomes, so that we break down that competitive mindset. We all come together and look at the shared goals and really try to build a container for recognizing that we all have important contributions to make to that, and that there is no one solution, there is no one sector to fix it, to remedy it, to advance it. Yeah, I would go in and really just trying to create those spaces for discussion and connection and collaboration.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Like I said earlier, we'll be sending through the other questions that we'll post for you, and we hope you'll be able to interact with us via your LinkedIn. So the next question is for Dr. Sarah. So Dr. Sarah, we have a question here that says, in the context of shrinking budgets for SBC initiatives across African regions and reprioritizing resources to service delivery, how might we operationalize nudge theory and prospect theory within hybrid models that fuse Western behavioral economics with indigenous knowledge systems? Example, the Ubuntu-based communal decision-making to enhance intervention cost efficiency and cultural resonance while minimizing reliance on other incentives. Thank you.
Thanks. Another really straightforward question. There's a lot packed in there. And I think to answer questions like that, it's really important to, first of all, determine who we means. Like in that conversation, when you think about who is the we that goes into those conversations, I think that is a starting point. And to locate your position and your view of change within that. Then I mean, I think we have a number of tools going to what Stephanie just mentioned. There's a lot of different perspectives and tools that if we come together and bring them together can be really useful, and they may or may not help in a context. But I think in the context that we're in, we really do need to come with an open and listening ear to understand what's going on in any given context, to determine whether or not nudge or any of these other prospect theory and Ubuntu, all that, how that works. And I think, again, where I would say the starting point is in trying to answer those questions is the starting point of any social and behavior change process, which is really your contextual analysis and spending time with the people who you want to work with and who you're working for to understand where they're coming from. And if there is a heart of sort of collective identity, Ubuntu, and those things that you've just mentioned, I mean, that's really important to honor and understand, and then think about how other perspectives or tools or strategies might feed into that. So it's not a, that, you know, it would depend on the context. I'm going to be a social scientist here, but it's clear to me from your question, you've been doing a lot of deep reading and thinking, which is really encouraging. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sarah. And our final question is for Nana. So Nana, here, the question is, private sector partners often look for, clear returns on investment. How can SBC frame its value in ways that resonate with business priorities? And from your experience, what mindset shift do we as SBC practitioners or development practitioners need in order to engage effectively with the private sector? Thanks.
Thanks, Nico. That's a double-headed question, and yes, so I'll take it from the investors' point first to the mindset shift. Let me touch on the mindset shift, which is very key. I think Prof. Ali touched on that at the introductory part of this session, that it should be from a mindset perspective. So it is not necessarily about funding cards or sources of funding. It is about the can do. It is about I can do it myself. It is about I can do it from my own resources. So I think that is the mindset we all have to work on, even from the work of development partners like SBC, that we should encourage people to do that. Again, with respect to, and I think I made that caution that in this shift to these funding options, the investors are not necessarily saints. However, in the current scheme of things, investors are proud to indicate their impact stories. No matter how commercially oriented they are, they want to make mention of the life they've touched, the impact they've made in certain areas of life. So these points are there from the private sector people, but there are investors who are first and foremost motivated by impact. So their focus should be on impact investors. Then we can build upon that. Nico, I hope this answers the question.
Thank you so much, Nana, and still more questions coming in. So we'll share those with you and the rest of the panelists. I would like to thank all the panelists, our speakers. Thank you to the audience for engaging with this conversation. For me, I think 3 themes stood out for me. It's important to kind of be aligned, which, have the transparency, donor transparency and alignment, which will help us position SBC more effectively. Our funding models need to evolve. Short cycles and siloed budgets can't deliver the durable change that we desire. And clearly new solutions are possible, from local businesses to diaspora funding and to some of, all the innovative things we heard Nana speak of, to innovative partnerships as well. So thank you very much to the three of you. Thank you for allowing me to moderate this very timely discussion. And on that note, let's continue to think boldly and change our mindsets about how we can sustain SBC in Africa. Thank you so much. I hand it back over to Billy.
Well, thank you, Nicole. We are now going to watch a video on community perspectives before the next session, which is breakaway groups. Thank you very much.
Outbreak of a dangerous strain of disease. Pox virus in Africa. The Pox virus, the Mpox outbreak, and the huge outbreak of a dangerous strain of disease. Pox virus in Africa. The virus
spreading is causing grave concern.
Contagious disease. That's
Now, according to a report,
relating 494 cases confirmed and 4 deaths registered across 52 districts.
Uganda has made remarkable progress in the fight against Mpox, driven by donor-supported programs that have reached deep into communities with vital information, timely services, and trusted relationships. These initiatives have empowered people to recognize symptoms early, take preventive measures, and seek care before the disease could spread. Yet progress is never guaranteed. When donor funding is reduced or cut, the very systems that safeguard communities begin to weaken. Outreach slows, trusted voices grow quieter, and the hard-earned bond between health workers and communities starts to erode. In public health, such gaps are more than delays. They create openings for diseases like Mpox to resurface, often with even greater force.
Emabega wali tiimu yaffe yakolanga ogw'okusomesa abantu buli lunaku mu kitundu ku bulwadde buno obwa Mpox. Twakyalira obutale, twakyalira amasomero, ababooda n'okugenda mulyango ku mulyango tusomesa abantu ku kirwadde kino ekya Mpox. Abalwadde abalina obulwadde buno obw'akawaali oba Mpox bagenda bakendeera naye oluvannyuma lw'okusalibwako obuyambi tetusobola kugenda mu maaso na kusomesa olw'ensonga nti n'ebikozesebwa byennyini tewakyali. Tulina abantu abamalirivu okukola n'okusomesa mu bitundu byaffe, naye ebikozesebwa tewali. Sanitayiza, ebipande ne transipooti okusobola okutuuka mu bitundu bye tulina okugenda nga tusomesa. Tugenza okukizuula nti obulwadde bweyongedde mu bitundu olw'okuba nga abantu tebakyafuna kukola ki kumanyisibwa ku kirwadde kino.
What's happening in Machindia is not an isolated story. It's a warning. The pause in donor support means fewer outreach visits and fewer safe spaces for learning and exchange. In densely populated areas, every missed conversation, postponed training, and every cancelled visit leaves the door open for challenges to grow. These may come as health threats like Mpox, environmental risks, or social and economic setbacks. Social and behavior change is more than a health tool. It is the approach being used by farmers to adopt climate-smart practices, enabling communities to embrace clean and renewable energy, supporting girls to stay in school, and driving local action on civil rights, gender equality, and child protection. SBC saves lives and transforms communities because it turns information into action that prevents problems before they escalate and build solutions that last.
Hello, we shall be going to the
Hello.
breakout rooms now.
Merci beaucoup d'avoir visualisé cette vidéo. On espère que vous avez tiré en tout cas de belles leçons. À présent, nous allons poursuivre vers les groupes, les sessions de groupe. Donc, vous recevrez certainement un lien tout à l'heure qui va vous diriger vers les travaux. Et si vous avez des difficultés, faites-nous savoir pour que nous puissions vous appuyer. Merci beaucoup.
Hello, kindly look out for your country to join the breakout rooms. If your country is not there, join any one of your choice to join the discussion. Just go where the breakout rooms are and join your country, or join a country of your choice if your country is not among the ones listed. Where is breakout? Hi, for someone asking where the link to the breakout rooms is, just go to down, should I call that the toolbar or what? You'll see something called breakout rooms. Just click on it. You see where there's participants, chat, react, share, host tools, AI companion, and then you'll see breakout rooms. Just click there and then you'll see join. So you click where your country is. I see many of the countries are still empty. Please go on the bottom right of your screen. The bottom.
For some computers, there's the word more. So you click
Yes,
on more,
there
then you go to the breakout session.
Yeah, you click on the three buttons where you see more, and then it will bring the breakout rooms if it's not being shown right now.
Okay, is it the same one for everyone? I can see some messages that there's issues to join.
Webinaire.
Okay, we are trying to just put you in the rooms. Donc, nous sommes en train de vous rediriger dans les groupes. Bonjour et bonsoir à tous. J'espère que vous... On vérifie juste que tout le monde soit de retour et que les groupes soient fermés. Et nous allons poursuivre la synthèse des travaux. Vous me recevez? OK. Donc, à présent, nous aurons le plaisir d'avoir maintenant l'intervention de Wassiou Bele Melakou, et qui est un animateur de la synthèse générale, qui fera la synthèse générale justement de ce symposium. C'est un professionnel chevronné de la santé publique et qui a à son actif plus de 24 années d'expérience dans le secteur du SBC et de la santé publique. Il a été responsable technique auprès de l'OMS, de l'UNFPA, mais aussi de l'UNICEF. Et donc, il a vraiment une expertise solide dans la promotion de la santé, de l'engagement communautaire et du changement de comportement social. Donc, merci beaucoup à Wassioum de nous rejoindre et il fera un résumé général du symposium tout à l'heure. Merci et à plus. Okay, it seems like we have some issues with the translation, so I will do it in English for the English speakers. So now we end the workshop and we come back on the principal room, and I have the honor to introduce Wangiru Matenge. And Wangiru Matenge is one of our speakers, and he is also the facilitator of the different session. And now he will help us to have the high-level findings of the breakout session. And just to let you know that Wangiru has been a senior program manager for EPPF on the WISH2, and previously he led the behavioral change initiative in PSI Kenya and the Population Kenya Service. And he also worked with the Women Lift Earth Leadership and as a civic advocate for women's voice in the global earth. So thank you, Wanjiru, for joining us and sharing these findings of the breakout session. Thank you.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much, Billy, for that introduction. So we are just at the tail end of the symposium, and thank you all for being so patient and so attentive and being so, we really appreciate your engagement on this. So we have just come out from the breakout sessions, from the country breakout sessions. And how we are going to do this, I'm going to call out a country name, and then you're going to have a very brief time to give us your key takeouts from what you discussed in the group, okay? I'm not going to do it in any fashion. I'll just call out a name, and hopefully your team has already identified the person who's going to be sharing on your behalf, okay? So I'm going to call out, maybe we should start at alphabetically at the end. I'll start out with Zambia. 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 I was in the Zambia group. I attended briefly. Okay. If Zambia is...
Hi, Wanju. Sorry,
Hi,
I was, yes, hi. I wasn't being allowed. I was trying to unmute until now. Thank you very much.
Right,
So I'll maybe look at some of the actions in terms of what we talked about. One of the key things that came out is trying to see how we can lobby the government to fund SPC activities, and using different already established structures like the technical working group to see how SBC can be more of a priority when it comes to like government budgeting as they budget for government funded activities. But also there was an interesting point that came out, seeing how we can also pool funds together. So there are different, right now we have different organizations that are trying to get, like send out proposals to different like funders for different activities, looking now that the resource base has reduced. But then maybe what if all of us, especially those that are doing that similar work, can come together and send out these proposals jointly so that money can come in and implement, and like where we're all trying to kind of like compete for the same funders. And that's maybe something that for me I found like really interesting, thinking how we can all collaborate. The fact that the resource base has reduced, why can't we all come together and not where we all compete for the little resource base that has remained? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Malumbo. That is so interesting. We just pool our funds together and make the cake bigger, isn't it? Okay, great. Thank you for that. Now I'm going to jump to Uganda. Uganda.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Please go
Yeah,
ahead.
Francis from Uganda here. Thank you so much for the opportunity. As it was just getting hot, the Ugandan discussion, time did us a thing, but nevertheless, we plan to have a follow-on conversation. But just three quick things that came out from our session. The local chapter, the local SBC, African Society for SBC chapter, the local chapter here has been very helpful in keeping staff that probably lost jobs and just to give that sort of social support, to give opportunities to colleagues and to come together to figure out what to do next. So that has been quite helpful. Number two, we've also realized that the key organizational players within the SBC space, especially, I will not mention organizations here, but they seem to be oddly silent about coming together to figure out what next. So I think some level of advocacy and just trying to build those partnerships and have conversations with these organizations in terms of what can be done better needs to be held. The other thing also, the third one, is that colleagues are also finding a bit of a challenge in terms of transitioning. The dynamics and perks of the development world and offices were a little bit black and white in comparison to what the available opportunities in agencies and in other sectors have to offer. So that has also come out something critical. And then maybe the fourth one is that the loss of good sustainable models, which ironically USAID was pushing and utilizing, they have now ceased to be sustainable. Yet all along we're pushing for sustainability and all these things. So that has also been an interesting conversation. So within the time permitting, those four key things sort of came out from our discussion.
Thank you, Francis. I like your last bit about sustainability and how ironic it is that one of the key things that USAID was very keen about was sustainability, but look at us now. So I'm going to call on Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso, are you ready? Please share with us your key points from the discussion. Thank you.
Au niveau du Burkina Faso, nous avons fait remarquer que le Burkina Faso était déjà confronté à une situation de départ de certains bailleurs de fonds, de certaines ambassades qui finançaient les programmes SBC et la situation, les programmes d'urgence, ce qui fait qu'il y avait un manque à gagner important et la fermeture des financements de l'USAID est venue ajouter, est venue aggraver la situation. Plusieurs programmes de développement ont fermé et il y a eu un impact aussi important même au niveau du gouvernement qui avait des financements avec qui étaient assurés par les États-Unis. Mais nous pensons qu'il y a des initiatives possibles parce qu'au niveau du Burkina, il y a déjà une initiative. Disons, le gouvernement est déjà dans la lancée de développement endogène et des financements sont mobilisés depuis plus de 2 ans pour faire face à des problèmes d'urgence et pouvoir continuer les interventions humanitaires. Et il y a des initiatives de développement endogène qui sont initiées et nous voyons que ça marche très bien. Et il y a le fonds communautaire pour assurer le soutien aux initiatives, aux problèmes urgents. Et donc, nous pensons que la dynamique dans laquelle le Burkina, le gouvernement se trouve est vraiment propice et nous pensons qu'il faut, on pourrait faire un plaidoyer pour amener une prise en compte des problèmes prioritaires qui sont identifiés, les domaines prioritaires des besoins de ces programmes-là, pour que cela soit inscrit dans les programmes, dans la budgétisation. Et on a aussi une bonne expérience en matière de nutrition multisectorielle, où cette année, il y a une décision du gouvernement qui demande à toutes les mairies, les mairies d'introduire dans leur plan sectoriel, de quinquennal et annuel dans leur budget des lignes budgétaires pour la nutrition, le WASH, la sécurité alimentaire et la protection. Donc, nous pensons que dans cette lancée, nous pouvons très bien faire le plaidoyer, identifier les priorités, les domaines prioritaires, les besoins et amener une prise de conscience des acteurs gouvernementaux et communautaires pour que cela soit pris en compte. Merci.
Thank you, Jean. Merci beaucoup. I like that you have highlighted that in Burkina Faso, there's already local funding, and which is such a great show of ownership. I'm going to call on South Africa, and then the next country will be Nigeria.
Thank you, Wanjuru. Good afternoon, Sila. One of the things that we noticed was obviously acknowledgement of job losses and how that has impacted on the morale of people that have been working in the field, as well as students that were actually training in the field. So almost putting a dampening into the future of the field, but also having noticed that the crowdsourcing that other colleagues spoke about, where people are coming together and learning to work together, finding the different strengths that they have and not fighting for the cake, so to say. What also we spoke about in terms of going ahead, what are the things that can actually be done? In the South African chapter, we're already speaking about creating a repository for SBC support within our own, but also that is something that could help other community members that maybe are writing proposals. That becomes a starting point for them. And we also spoke about we actually need to be advocating for SBC within the government, and there have been work that has already been done in terms of engaging government at national level, and creating like a lobby group is something that is a thought in terms of going ahead in future. Can we have a lobby group that actually takes on to engagement in government and private sector, but also the idea of we need to engage our entrepreneurial edge and regarding how we resource our SBC ideas. One of the interesting quotes that came out in our discussions was in issues of, in most cases, SBC, it seems to be like a nice to have, and we actually need to establish SBC as a value add and start so that companies can start budgeting for that. But the big question also that we also had was, how do we design our SBC work from a zero budget? And how do we, and one interesting one was, if capitalism didn't fail us, will there ever be a situation where development workers will work themselves out. And I think if we can answer that and maybe see how our thought process goes back to, let's go back to the communities. So those are part of the discussions in summary. Thank you.
Thank you, Sile. Thank you so much for that summary. Maybe as I prepare for the Nigeria team to talk, just to get a snapshot of what you shared, it's really going back to the common threads which are coming out from this symposium around trying to come together, the whole aspect of Ubuntu or Harambee, or trying to leverage on each other's strengths. And then the other, I think, has come out as being community-led and community-driven and community-owned. So thank you for that. Nigeria, are we ready?
Sure, we're ready. So for our group, please confirm you can hear me.
Loud and clear, thank you.
Yeah, so we had a quick conversation, and we agreed that there was need to reprioritize SBC as a country because the emphasis on SBC has really gone down over time because of funding challenges. SBC has largely depended on foreign aid, foreign support, because it is projects that kind of give birth to SBC intervention. So there was need to reprioritize that and locally own, SBC as an important response. And then the second thing we talked about was that it is multi-sector and overarching, and that is both a plus and a minus, because a plus in the sense that if we take full advantage of it, it moves us forward towards a better country in terms of behavior change, attitude to work, ethics, and all of that. But a minus in the sense that everyone might ignore it because someone is thinking that another person is dealing with the challenge while nobody is dealing with it. So the other thing we talked about was the need to get SBC in the front burner of government conversations with relevant ministries, departments, and agencies. And then if the new body, because one of the challenge we identified was also in terms of coordination and being organized as a national SBC program. And thankfully, with the Nigerian Society for SBC, which is also part of the global and regional body, we are going to be able to address that challenge of coordination. And if we're able to get it recognized by government, who knows, we might be able to get funding and we might be able to influence policy and support for SBC going forward. Lastly, we talked about public-private integration, investment, and partnership, such that we are able to support private institutions, corporate firms, and be able to provide, even to the extent that we sell our expertise to those institutions in exchange for resources to support and sustain our work. I think this was it, but my other team members can add if I dropped anything. Thank you very much once again, and over.
Thank you, Bartholomew. I love it. I like the strategic thoughts that are coming out of the country discussions. Just to give a snapshot, Nigeria have spoken about having SBC at the front of key government institutions. So where does it sit? And I was having a discussion with a colleague and said, where is the strategic, where does strategy sit within government, and where can we be able to influence these approaches across all the sectors? So I'm glad that we are all on the same page. That also it is a multi-sectoral thing, and that is amazing. So I want to now move back to the West Africa side. We go to Sierra Leone, and then after Sierra Leone, we shall come back, we shall go to Zimbabwe.
Hi, Wanjiru. I put in the chat for time's sake, but I can repeat it out loud for the group. The Sierra Leone team, we didn't have much time, but the one member was discussing how we've built the demand for products and services among the population, but there are no products or services now when the population is demanding it. And this can lead to lack of trust after all that demand is raised for products and services. And it was disappointing to the population. And MPOX was given as a key example. And it was stated that you cannot do health without social and behavior change. And some of the vaccinators in the community now have had to play a double role of community mobilization and vaccination. Over.
Thank you for that summary. And I love that you can't do health without SBC, and SBC is really at the forefront of it all. Thank you so much.
The one thing I'll add to that, sorry, we also had a Kenyan member in our Sierra Leone group, and he mentioned that there's lapsed sustainability, especially because many donors have left, and he works in peace building, and the government is not providing funding, and there are strains on the gains made in peace building, especially during elections. Peace building is more reactive than proactive in the funding streams, and there isn't long-term funding to finance by the donors or government. However, they are navigating at the local community level to foster change champions to bring their own funding and initiatives mobilized at the community level and how to coexist in the community to sustain peace gains made. Over. You're on mute.
Thank you. Thanks, Camden. I want to now call, I would say thank you for that addition. I want to call on Zimbabwe and Zimbabwe and then Tanzania. Zimbabwe.
Okay, Wanjiru, the group was not there in the breakout session. So we migrated to Sierra Leone.
Okay, so we saw emerging. That's fantastic. That's so great.
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
Thank you. I want to go to Tanzania.
Yes, hello, Wanjiru.
Hi, Dio.
Yes, so in Tanzania, we also had a couple of reflection, and we looked at how the current funding has posed challenges to us. First, during the funding freeze, where USAID was finalizing the newest national level SBCC program, which was also halted, leaving us with no approved national level. So currently we don't have a national level SBCC program, which was supporting the regional level program. So that's another challenge and factor that we've seen. But also, even those programs that had SBCC embedded struggle to define what counts as life-saving, and therefore could not even secure some of the protection. Some of them were also halted. And the government itself was caught unprepared, since the health budget has already been passed some previous months later, and this was coming. There was also still a gap in clearing, defining, and even operationalizing the public-private partnership to support SBCC program. So those are some of the challenges that currently, and we first stated we're still facing, but also we also looked at and discussed how we can mitigate or turning these challenges in some of our opportunities. And we look at some of the things that have already been discussed, leveraging corporate social responsibility and strengthening the PPP, but also exploring innovative financing, such as looking at beyond country-wise, looking at our diaspora community through taxation to support some of the development initiatives. The country itself has made a step forward by introducing a new tax on importation of new vehicles. This specifically amount to be supporting in the procurement of ARVs. It's an area which has already been impacted by the current funding halt. but also venturing into social enterprises, some of like looking at eco-friendly products that also can generate this revenue for SBCC. Also looked into regional pool funding. We have these communities such as East African Community, SADC and so forth partnership. We can look at to support cross-border development initiative. And our last is most important is SBCC need to be normalized within our own system of country level by mandating some of the line, especially in the health sector, looking at the health sector budget and at national level, but also at the sub-national level in the countryside by making it mandatory for some lines to support SBCC. Once we normalize them, and then even our SBCC initiative will also be normalized since they're already being reflected at the current within the system, the government system. So this is what high-level summary for what we've discussed from the Tanzania group. Thank you.
Thank you, Dio. Thank you for that. And thank you for those discussions. I like the regional pool funding. I think that has really come up even from a community perspective where we are getting community solutions owned and also looking at how we can be able to solve our own problems. So even looking at it from a broader perspective, from a regional perspective. So thank you so much for that. I want to call out Ethiopia. I know we've not done Ethiopia. We have not done Ghana. So Ethiopia, Ghana, then we finish with Kenya. Ethiopia.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. Thank you.
Hi.
So we, the Ethiopian team, have discussed on some topics. I will highlight some of them. So as the impact was large in our country, as a lot of SVC projects were funded by donors, a lot of projects were cut off and a lot of deliverables were not met, and already started developments like community engagements were cut off, especially in underprivileged populations and in rural areas. And because a lot of people were let go, there was also the financial and the psychosocial impacts of unemployment. And some adaptations were made to mitigate some of these impacts. This is by securing the psychosocial status of staffs and also by providing emotional support and by integrating and adopting and linking major achievements and resources with the government system, including regional and local organizations, by resource mobilizations, and also by reprioritizing our agendas so as to use lesser resources, and by also revitalizing and reusing previously used SBC materials and interventions for upcoming and new projects by tailoring it into the needs of each community. And also by integrating SBC into other sectors, as we have the best experience of working in SBC in the health sector. We have integrated SBC into the other sectors like the agriculture, the education, and the likes, and also by using digital approach and skills in of the previously used communication mediums and materials. And as far as to what practical actions can Ethiopia take to strengthen and secure sustainable financing for SBC, we have suggested that strengthening SBC professionals, associations, and alliance with different sectors, including the private sectors, and also by including SBC-focused interventions in different health priorities and aligning it with strategies and annual plan alignments by the governments and also partners. And the key highlight from our discussion was that we should not just advocate for SBC, we should show the impacts of SBC so that the government and also other sectors can see the impacts of SBC in our communities and can actually support it. Thank you.
Thanks, Shidette. Just reiterating that we really are advocating for integration of SBC into government systems, into government structures, into approaches that are going to be used across the board, not just for health. And I know that health really brought SBC to the front because it was donor funded. Now I want to give to Ghana and then Kenya. Ghana.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, good evening. So this is Ghana. With regards to the funding crisis, the team agreed that most programs stopped. Some even believe that everything stopped in the area of SBC. So a number of things stopped. It created unemployment. Some programs were suspended halfway. Developments in some parts of the country were also suspended. So it affected the country. But we got a very good quote. And the quotation is, funding is not coming. We need to rise up to the new realities and either adapt or die. Funding is not coming. We need to rise up to the new realities and either adapt or die. And then with regards to the second question on some of the actions that the country can take, the team agreed that we need to diversify our funding sources. And then government must make SBC programs an integral part of its policy in terms of funding. We also agreed that the country must lead in driving SBC programs. Initially, it used to be led by donor agencies funding from outside. The country must take active interest in this one and help in leading that. And then another suggestion the team came up with was that we need to look at how else we can take funding. It was an unpleasant discussion, but we still need to push that. Can taxes help us find alternative funding sources for some of our SBC things? So it's something that we can look at. People mention alcoholic drinks and sugary and tobacco, and can taxes on this help us move forward? And then there was another suggestion on digital micro donations, mobile money suppliers. Is there a way they can, because they have CSR projects that they support, can they increase funding into those areas and then help push SBC activities forward? And I say that we also don't need to end there, but we need to collaborate. We've said on separate occasions that Africa is one, Africa is one. How are we integrating and how are we collaborating among ourselves and partnering ourselves? We know that there's government and NGO forum currently in discussion. The government is discussing with the NGO forum on what they can do in terms of funding of this project, which we think is a very good discussion for alternative funding. And then we are saying that the communities must also get involved. At least they got some basics in terms of what to do, what not to do. They also need to start improving on some of those things. So thank you. This is where we also ended with regards to Ghana.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ghana. Just to get maybe some 2 points from that is that that everything stopped. And this is a constant reflection across all the countries that the funding crisis has hit us all. And there are various things that we have proposed. And one of the things is that there's nobody who's coming to save us. We have to save ourselves. Just reiterating what Alan said earlier, that we are the ones to save ourselves. And I like that there's a lot of reiteration of what has been presented throughout the afternoon around innovative ways of funding, around coming together, about Uhuru, about Harambee, Ubuntu, and so many other things. So I just want to give a chance to Kenya before I do a very quick summary.
Thank you, Wanjiru.
Thanks, Susan.
And from Kenya, we discussed a few points. The first one was about redefining our resources. So it goes beyond the funding and the staffing. So we had points from the group that we have staff that have exited, but that does not mean that the capacity has exited from our communities. So we have to leverage on the assets, on the knowledge, the relationships, and the systems that remain. From one of our presenters, we had about the mindset shift. So we need to recognize that shift exactly and also see the value in non-monetary resources. The second thing was about learning from what works. We had an example from one of our colleagues in the health sector, and she's advising that we need to pick learnings from the health sector and integrate them in the other sectors. So we've seen so much of government coming into play, community-driven approaches, strong networks, and so we have an opportunity to pollinate these strategies, SBC strategies, into agriculture, into education, and every other sector. We also realized that we are not starting from zero. We are building from the middle. We have what we've done in the past, our efforts, our networks, our policies. So there's already a strong foundation that we have from previous programming. So the challenge now is to leverage on what's there and have more collaboration and also adapt more. So another thing is to realize that SBC is a co-investment. It's not just like a luxury. So we've seen an example of the people who have been able to mobilize resources and start new programs, putting a case for having SBC staff come in, but you find that maybe other staff are given more priority, that SBC is not a priority if we don't have enough funding. So we need to make an SBC, a case for SBC that it's needed so that we can have lasting behavior and systems changes. And the last thing is to see who we are missing in our collaborations, who's out there, who are the other funders, social enterprises. Somebody talked about hybrid philanthropy, more co-creation, more private sector engagements, impact investments, and any other government-led programming, and more engagement also in policy. That's all from Kenya. Thank you so much. Over to you, Wanjiru.
Thank you, Susan. And I think that's it from the countries. I hope I've not forgotten anyone, but as we do finalize, I just want to bring everything together. So one, we've said that, yes, this funding, the funding cuts really put us in an interesting position, in a crisis kind of position. And I like what was said earlier by Alan. Nobody's coming to save us. We are our own saviors. And so what we have to do is to tell our story and tell it good. Another thing that I like what you said, Susan, that we are not starting from scratch. We have a really good foundation where SBC has been used. We can definitely leverage on those partnerships, on the systems and the processes that have already been put together to see how best to integrate it into other sectors. The idea of having SBC embedded into strategy, into policy, into approaches that government can be able to use is definitely a good one, because then we can be able to reach wide, to go wide, and also to go in depth. So where we're looking at agriculture, we're looking at education, even though it's used just a bit, we're looking at other sectors. What else can we be able to do? So how can we be able to ingrain that? Another key thing that has come out, there was an idea about mindset, which was also spoken about by Professor Ali. He said mindset, and I think there was a comment in the chat around what do we do with corruption. I think it's a mindset issue. I think if we just change our attitude around greed, around it's our turn to eat. There's also a book called that, It's Our Turn to Eat, and it's by a Kenyan author. That mindset that it is now the 4 years that I have to be in government to be able to eat, if we change that and use that to be able to have community-owned solutions, community-owned problems, then we can be able to do much, much more. I am cognizant that of the time, and I want now to, and I know that there's going to be a session that we are going to summarize like the key things and also look at the key results. So I'm going to hand over back to Billy, and thank you so much for your participation, even in the dark. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Wanjiru, for this summary. And I guess that we really have a long journey of reflection, and I hope people still have some energy in the package because we are moving now to the closing step. And I'm really glad to announce you now, Mr. Washihun Pele Melaku, and I hope that I pronounce right the name. So he will support us to make the overall summary of the symposium. And just to let you know that Mr. Bile has now 24 years of experience in different sectors. He has been working with UNFPA, UNICEF, and many NGOs at countries level. And he also has a great expertise in health promotion and community engagement, particularly in social behavior change and other things. So I'm really glad to announce now Mr. Bile for the overall summary. Thank you very much. Mr. Bile Alu-Eron.
Hello. Yes, thank you. I think someone has to unmute me. I cannot unmute from here.
We can hear you.
Yeah, but the video is still has to mute. Hello?
Was just a minute. Wes, you can go ahead and display your video.
Okay, thank you very much. We have had excellent presentations with rich discussions under various topics. So my role is not to bring just a new presentation, but rather to guide us in reflecting together what are the key themes we have heard, what are the recommendations that we have to prioritize, and what are the actionable next steps. So together we will go through the key themes. So I have tried to capture the recurrent themes over the past sessions. So in the interest of time, I think it may be good to really display the list of the themes as a startup. So we have the funding crisis realities, which has been really an issue and a critical portion of every topic. So this has been discussed very well. And the second thing is about the repositioning of SCBC, because taking into consideration the current funding aid cuts, this repositioning of the SCBC as an accelerator of change has been also discussed, and this is one of the themes that recurrently emerge. And thirdly, the diversification of funding portfolio. This is also another theme that has been really brought up across all sessions and presentations. Evidence and accountability gaps also has been one of the themes. And innovation and resilience. Innovation and resilience is not only about the funding aspect, but also on how to design really low-cost SCBC interventions, taking into account the funding cut. So there were several recommendations about this. Also, the sustainability and ownership has been also another theme that has been really coming over and over again. So these 7 teams are the major teams as presented as a clustered around this. So lots of things have been discussed, but the main themes that can be really summarized are these. So now I am bringing, or I am asking the audience to really consider this, and if there are themes that are missed, the floor is yours. So we encourage you to really add more teams if there are missed ones. Hello? Hello? Is my voice heard?
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Yes.
We can hear you.
Yeah, these are the teams that are captured, and these are teams that really clustered lots of things, but across all presentations and discussions, these are the major teams. So if we have more, then we can update this one. If not, then we can move to the recommendation sections. Okay. So based on the teams, then what are the recommendations to be prioritized? Because one of the objectives of this symposium is to really develop a roadmap. So these recommendations are based on the teams. So the first one is the diversification of funding portfolios. So many things have been presented. I will not go through them, but even from the breakout sessions, like raising taxation from sugary drinks, and also the digital micro donation, all these have been indicated, including the public-private investment. So this is one of the recommendations to diversify funding portfolio. I think hello. Yeah. Please,
Yeah, we are hearing you, sir.
can you go back to the recommendations, please? Yeah. So the second thing is the sustainability and ownership. So this includes like tackling dependency syndrome, decolonizing our mindsets, shifting to local resource mobilizations. So this is also one of the recommendations. And thirdly, the funding, I think there is a mix. I think there is a mix of these themes and the recommendations. This is not the list that I have prepared. So repositioning SCBC comes again as a recommendation, generating evidence and accountability measures, also advocating for global, regional, and national SCBC leadership structure is also one thing. And the other recommendation is the integration of SCBC policy into policies, projects, and systems. So this has been also one of the recommendation. Also, the repositioning of the SCBC, such as the community sensational stories. This has been also presented by Alan. So I think these are the recommendations, but still, I think this has been mixed with the teams. This is not the one that I prepared as a recommendation. So I still encourage you to include more recommendations, but these are the recommendations that I tried to capture while the presentation were going on. So can you move to the last section of this summary? Hello, Mabel. Please move to the next. Okay, so now based on the themes and recommendations, so what are the actionable next steps? Which means I think we need to identify what to be done, who is going to take the lead, and also when to implement. So the first one is just generate evidences. So this has to be done. I think there has to be a task force, or the secretariat can designate a group to really generate evidence to show that ACBC can attract investment. So it's about moving from outputs to impacts. And the second one is the organized advocacy for integrating ACBC into policy systems. This has been brought up several times, but then what would be, how do we design our roadmap really to organize advocacy forums for advocacy activities? Because we have said that integration of ACBC into policy systems and project is an essential component. And the fourth one is build multi-sectoral partnership with government, private sectors. This has been also one of the recommendations. Again, build coalition with donors based on transparent engagement. This has been also raised several times. So building coalition with donors is an important actionable step. The last thing is consolidate outcomes into a joint communique. So just to meet the fourth objective of this symposium, which is to develop a roadmap, I think there has to be a joint communique based on the outcome of this symposium. But I still encourage the participants to really forward their additional themes, recommendations, and also actionable steps. So by this, I come to the end of my session. In fact, my role is to moderate, to encourage participants to forward their themes, additional themes, recommendations, and actionable steps. So in the remaining time, I will leave the floor for participants to forward their suggestions. So over to the chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Wasun, for that wonderful summary. We are now going to our last speaker of the day, Barbara Davis, who is representing the organization of the symposium leadership and is also the country lead for Ghana.
Thank you, Titus. Yes. Thank you, Titus, and hello, everybody. My work is really difficult, very, very difficult, is to say thank you to everybody who came on this project, who helped us in diverse ways, who has contributed and done all of this. In our world, we say to the untrained eye, it looks like 4 hours, but we know there was a great deal of work to get all of this organized. So thank you so much for the wonderful session. We've learned a lot. All the Manos, Tundes, Aminas, and Michaels in the house, thank you all very, very much. A few things we learned, and I shall say something that Prof. Ali Anwi said, that there are many roads to salvation, and so we have to rethink. We have to think and say, the system we've got, is it working? Is it going to work for us in the future? And reset our minds. Because yes, between Stephanie and everybody, there will always be development partners. The funds are dwindling, and for as long as somebody gives the money for projects, they will have terms and conditions you must comply with. To own the process, we must own our own agendas, and we must think in a portfolio solutions approach and work together as one and push this agenda forward, because we can. It's in our system to build systems and structures that work for community. And sometimes maybe we boxed ourselves into a corner with the whole structure we had. Again, Sarah said it, maybe it became too big, it became too competitive, and we were working against each other. But we mustn't forget what SBC is about. Is at the center is the human being. People's development, people's progress is a long-term project, which is why Alan said, we must remember the story we are telling and tell the story clearly and stop getting bogged down in graphs and charts and the hubris that gets in the way of big projects. We don't run projects, we run long-term solutions. That is what SBC is about. Well, where will humanity be if SBC wasn't there in all the crises that have happened? We know what we do is critical, and the donor companies will still, agencies will still be here working with us, but we must come to the table with something. Again, Nana told us that various funding opportunities we can look at is for us to determine what it is we are about, how we are going to go it, how we band together, and what we look at for long-term and sustainable solutions. Because even when the donors do come along, they want long-term solutions, and we must integrate SBC into everything we do. So for the 4 hours we spent together, thank you everybody ever so much. There are a few things we have to do moving forward, and in the spirit of being at one, please, if you are not a member of your country chapter, do sign up and bring your talent, your energy, your experience, your way forward, because we need innovation. We need to integrate, and we will be here for as long as there's humanity. SBC will be critical to us. A few things we are going to do in the future, so please look out for that. A few activities. Could the country chapters please meet up and set up your executive committees, please? Thank you. And also do share the details to be posted on the website. And we, the team, the center, the secretariat, will finalize this whole SBC finance rethinking activities and share through. So thank you once again, one and all, for your support, your presence, your participation. We will count on you moving forward. And as they say, long live the ASSBC and long live the industry we are in. Thank you and have a good afternoon. Back to you, please, Titus.
Thank you very much, colleagues. We are 21 minutes past our time. Well, this was a wonderful symposium. We end here and we'll be in touch and continue to network online. Have a lovely rest of the week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
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 Au revoir, merci.
Au revoir. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Merci.
Merci. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you for organizing.